I am recording now. Let me just make sure a couple things are going here. I'm there. And now I need to find my presentation. This is so weird. I'm used to doing these in person, not virtual. And I know with the holidays and everything coming up, not everyone can make it to in-person events. But once again, thank you all so much for being here for this virtual lunch and learn. I hope you have a lunch and a drink. Get comfortable, take notes if you want to. So my name is Christina Wright. I'm a master horticulturist and sustainable landscape expert in Maryland. I own and operate my business, Design-A-Scape, and I specialize in native plants and sustainable landscape solutions. I've been in business the last year and a half. I've been in the industry for about 10 years. I've just been focusing on helping people convert their lawns to low maintenance landscaping and introducing the insects and the pollinators that we want to help our environment. So I'm going to be talking with you all today about overwintering insects in the mid-Atlantic. I have to say I had a really fun time putting this presentation together. I also learned a few things as well. Yeah, let's get started. And if you all have questions, please pop on and ask. I know there's a chat going, so please ask all the questions or raise your hand. I really like to get everyone involved as well. So overview, I'm going to be going over the classification and the roles of the insects, life cycle development, overwintering strategies of common insects, supporting our overwintering insects, and also Q&A. So when talking about insects, I'm going to be breaking down into exactly what they are because I feel like as gardeners and landscapers, it's important that we kind of know what we're looking at when we're trying to invite these creatures into our yards and gardens. So insects are part of the phylum Arthropoda, which means that they have a jointed foot. And they have a division of body into segments. They have an external skeleton, which they have to periodically shed, which I'll get into later. And they are subdivision, and then they have a heart that runs along the dorsal part of their body, and then a nerve cord running along the ventral part of their body. And this is a great diagram here that shows you the physiological breakdown of the insect. Oops, I have one person waiting to come into the waiting room. So within the phylum Arthropoda, there is class Insecta. And that's essentially all of the insects I'm going to be talking about. They're part of this class. And the class Insecta, the insects have very distinct physiological characteristics. So once again, they have the body segments that are broken down into the head, thorax, and the abdomen. They have 3 pairs of legs that are located on the thorax and 1 pair of antennae. Oops, why is this not moving forward? Sorry, my computer is not cooperating. So within class Insecta, there's actually 5 diverse insect orders, and all of these orders are the insects that we're going to be seeing that are overwintering. We're going to be seeing them popping up in early spring. You're going to be seeing them really often in your garden. A lot of them are high pollinators that we actually want to be attracting and supporting, especially through the overwintering process. So the first one is beetles. Their Coleoptera is the genus. Ants, bees, and wasps is Hymenoptera. Flies, Diptera. True bugs, Hemiptera. Butterflies and wasps, Lepidoptera, which if you've ever been to a Doug Tallamy discussion. I actually went to see him a couple weeks ago, and it was really cool seeing his perspective on native landscaping. And he was talking a lot about introducing the Lepidoptera species, you know, and I know he's a big oak guy, so that was really cool as I was putting this together, learning more about the Lepidoptera species. So um each order has their own very specific physiological characteristics. For example, beetles, they have strong jaws to chew, 3 pairs of legs on the thorax, and a lot of the grubs develop below ground. Ants, bees, and wasps are, of course, a little bit different. What's interesting is when I was, you know, putting all my thoughts and outline together, I was trying to find different images and things on how ants, bees, and wasps actually overwinter, and it was really hard to find exact descriptions of those and images. And it actually makes sense now because a lot of them are either hidden within plants, they have specialized nest cells, they live in colonies, and then a lot of the larval stages are really hard to find, and I'll be going into that later too, so I'm really excited about that. This away. And then flies, Diptera. Oops, I misspelled a word there, but that's okay. So the larvae of true flies lack legs. They lack a distinct head area. On the hind end of their body, they have what's called spiracles, which is like an oxygen exchange. And then their larval stage is known as maggots, which I know we're all really not a fan of those. Kind of gross. And then true bugs, hemiptera, those are the ones with the piercing, sucking mouth parts. True bugs are things like assassin bug, stink bug, I think I think lady beetle is a coleopter, but I've also read, it doesn't matter, it's okay. So true bugs are kind of like the ideal what a real bug should look like. And then, of course, butterflies and wasps, their immature stages are known as caterpillars. Of course, we all know that. They have prolegs, and they have 2 to 5 pairs of those prolegs. And I love this quote, actually. So when I was at the Doug Tallamy lecture, he was mentioning the author E.O. Wilson, and I actually have one of his books on my book list. If you're not part of my book club, I highly recommend it. I'll talk more about the book club later. So in this quote, it says, if all mankind were to disappear, the world would regenerate back to the rich state of equilibrium that existed 10,000 years ago. If insects were to vanish, the environment would collapse into chaos. And that actually is very much true because insects are what we need to keep our life cycle going. Not only do they pollinate our food, but they feed the birds, and they have their own purpose in dispersing seeds and soil health and all of those things. So it's just something to keep in mind. There's a question. Moths are in the insect class Lepidoptera. So moths and butterflies are in the Lepidoptera. Sorry, there's like message. Hold on one second. Let me go back here. Oh, yes, that is a typo. Oops. I will fix that. Sorry about that. Yeah, lepidopters, butterflies, and moths, not wasps. That is my fault. It's okay. I can actually fix it now. Thank you for catching that. Oops, here, let me go here. I will say it is, and moths. Oops, that is so crazy because I fixed that when I was editing it this morning, but that's okay. Fixed. Okay, and there's one more person coming in. I love Canva too. It makes it so easy to do presentations, and I love their templates and layouts. I do a lot of my presentations in here. Yeah, thank you all so much for that catch. Butterflies and moths. There we go. I fixed it. So roles of insects. I feel like this is also an important component as well when we're talking about and learning about insects and understanding their overwintering processes. Because right now, I know we're all struggling with the leave movements, where our neighbors are taking away the leaves, and there's a lot of non-native invasive plants that aren't really supporting our insect wildlife. But insects have a lot of different roles, and because each of them have different mouth parts, they have different body composition, they have, some can fly, some are in the soil. Just knowing how they play a part in our ecosystem is important to take into consideration when we're trying to identify what's coming up in the spring after everything is overwintered. And I'm going to talk later about, the awareness around gardening for the insects that you want to attract, because that's really part of this component as well. But insects, not only do they pollinate flowering plants, but they're really good macro decomposers, since a lot of them do live in the soil. They maintain plant communities. Of course, a lot of them are food sources for wildlife. And they're I think insects are awesome. Since I started my business, I honestly haven't really been paying much attention to the insect aspect. And after listening to Doug tell me, and after doing this little lunch to learn, I really now want to put an emphasis on making sure that I'm putting in the right host plants for these different insect species to make sure that they have overwintering opportunities. Since now we're in this really weird climate change. It's just crazy. And this is another quote that I found that I thought was very relevant. Insects are not optional. It's not okay if they disappear. Insects are the primary drivers of our ecosystems. If they go, we go. Oops, why are you not working? So now I'm going to get into more of the life cycle development of insects. This is really important, especially as we identify how they overwinter. So it's essentially with molting, each stage of the life cycle development sheds existing exoskeleton, and that turns into the construction of a new one. So essentially what happens when insects molt is they just get bigger in body size. And they go through what's called different instars. So instars are the physical stage in between molts, and stadium is a duration of the instar period. So as you see here, I have some examples of insects that molt to get larger. Of course, there's a cicada, which we all know about because they leave their little exoskeletons on the trees. Especially when we had that crazy year a couple years ago with the cicadas coming and all that. They were everywhere. The common walking stick This is a really neat picture of the walking stick shedding its exoskeleton, and also aphids. So if you ever have an aphid problem in your landscape, it's easy to identify because you just look on the bottom side of the leaf and you can see their little exoskeleton casings along with like stippling and things like that, because they do have the piercing mouth parts. Another important life cycle development is metamorphosis. And there's actually a couple, there's a couple different types of metamorphosis, which I thought was really interesting. Because, you know, when I was in school and stuff, you know, I would mainly learn about the butterfly metamorphosis and not really paying attention to there's several different types that insects molt and grow and develop. So the first one isn't really applied to insects so much. A metabolist development, that means no metamorphosis. So essentially, in this type of metamorphosis, the larvae or the little baby bugs look exactly like the adult bugs. And you'll see that in springtail, silverfish, and jumping brisktails. And then the other type is called hemimetabolist development. So this is essentially the simple metamorphosis, which is egg, nymph, and and then adult. So this is a really good graphic here that shows that simple metamorphosis here. So with the grasshopper, it start out as eggs, they hatch, then they go through these different instars. So first, second, third, fourth, and then fifth into the nymph, and then they become the adults. And a lot of insects will have different molting phases. Some or like the different instar phases, some might have 1 or 2, some could have up to 5. I think some can even have up to 7, which is really crazy since a lot of them even have short lifespans. And then this is, of course, holometabolist development called complete metamorphosis. So this is what we see frequently with lady beetles and butterflies, moths. So it's going from eggs to larvae to pupae to adult. And essentially in this complete metamorphosis, each stage looks different than what the adult would look like. Whereas in the simple metamorphosis, the nymphs are going to be looking like those adults. So it's important to know that the life cycle of the insect determines their overwintering strategy. Come on. Oh, I have to click it. What is really cool is that insects actually utilize a range of techniques and adjustments that is relevant to their life stage. And that allows them to do crazy physiological things with their bodies and scarcity of resources. And it allows them to continue their life cycle. I actually found some really awesome things how some insects overwinter just by changing their physiological, like internal physiology. We'll take a sip of water. So some insects overwinter as eggs. There's honestly really not a whole lot that do, which I found interesting. So assassin bugs, gypsy moths, praying mantis, and beetles are some of the few that overwinter as egg masses. And what is crazy, so this is a gypsy moth life cycle. So from, you have, you know, September to April, it looks like that you have this egg stage for the gypsy moth. And I wanted to include this in here because when I was working for a commercial landscape company years ago, when I first started working in the industry, we would try to eradicate different insects that would be in the soil. And also lawn care companies do the same thing, where they actually track the life cycle of these insects to apply certain chemicals to eradicate them. So, and the same thing happens with Japanese beetles. So Japanese beetles, gypsy moths, and a few other insects that are considered pests. A lot of these companies will actually track instars, and they hire, you know, IPM professionals, integrated pest management professionals that know a lot about entomology. So they study these different insects, and they get an idea of, okay, well, this insect is going to be in this egg stage, and we can only use this chemical at this time to eradicate. And it's just crazy to me, you know, after trying to really transition and be more sustainable, environmentally friendly, that we even consider doing this, you know, even though these insects are considered pests and they're overwintering, they're still an important part of our environment. You know, I know, you know, they cause a lot of defoliation, and some of them, like the gypsy moth, you know, can really destroy trees and all that, but just putting the pieces together has been crazy. And even on this circle here, you know, you see that little blue mark there, it says biological pesticide. So from May to June is when, you know, if you're working with an IPM professional or you have a gypsy moth problem and you're trying to eradicate it, that's when you want to use that biological pesticide to get rid of the different stage. And then there's burlap banding, which I've never really heard of before. So yeah, it's just important, you know, to know that life stage and what life stage those insects are. Oops, I keep forgetting I have to do this. So we all know the woolly bear caterpillar, and this is really neat to find this out. So the woolly bear caterpillar actually is a larval stage for the Isabella tiger moth. And these caterpillars are actually overwinter with the, you know, as a caterpillar. So the bristles are actually there for a reason. They're called setae. And the bristles actually help this caterpillar to withstand the really cold temperatures this time of year, because that's when they overwintered. They overwinter as a larval stage. And these caterpillars actually are called freeze tolerant, which means that they create a natural organic antifreeze called glycerol. So their internal bodies freeze bit by bit until everything but the interior that setae is covering isn't frozen. And the setae protect their internal cells so they don't completely freeze throughout their entire body and die. And I thought that was really awesome. I never knew that before about the woolly bear caterpillar. So they have a really good overwintering strategy there. Another common one that we see is called the rosy maple moth. And these moths actually lay eggs on the underside of leaves on the outer edge of the tree canopy, and then they overwinter as these pupa here in the ground. So this is a type of moth that you would want to leave the leaf litter for. And essentially they feed in aggregates up until the third instar, at which point they begin to feed individually. So that was really cool. And here's a Luna moth. I know we're all familiar with this one. And they actually take the leaves and kind of fold them. The caterpillars like fold into the leaves, and then they really bury themselves in that leaf litter. So it's important that we really leave that leaf litter, especially for these Luna moths. And then the caterpillars themselves actually enter a state of dormancy, so they can withstand the freeze thaw temperatures and the frost and the snow. And then sometimes they can actually stay in that state for up to 9 months. I know I'm going to be attracting more of those in my landscaping. They're neat. And here's a black swallowtail caterpillar. They have the same strategy as the Luna moth. And they go through the dormancy period called diapause. And essentially diapause just halts their development inside that the chrysalis. And they have what's called like the woolly bear caterpillar, the freeze avoidance, which is that natural antifreeze production. And here's a Crocopia moth. I love these moths. These moths are really neat. And the same thing here, they enter that diapause period and they overwinter in their little chrysalis cocoons. And then the really neat thing, the cocoons possess outer and inner envelopes that are essentially waterproof, and they're separated by silk. And then essentially what their life cycle is, they pupate, diapause, go through the dormancy period, and then they emerge back in the spring. Mason bees. Does anyone have mason bees in their gardens or landscaping? I have a few clients who have some mason bees, and they're really neat. So essentially with mason bees, they hollow out the stems, and that's why it's important that we leave any stems for the winter. There's that movement right now where to not cut back anything too early because of insects like this that actually utilize the hollowed out pith in the center, and they burrow in them, and then that's where they stick their larvae and the pollen. And then the larvae spend the winter inside the hollowed out stems and undergo development, and then they emerge as adult bees in the following spring. And I didn't realize that mason bees actually are, they just have solitary eggs. So these guys don't really live in colonies. I mean, yeah, they're more solitary than, than other bees. And leaf cutter bees. I think these guys are probably one of my favorite bees. I don't know if you've ever been walking around in the woods. But if you see the like little cutouts on leaves, that's from these guys. And I feel like their overwintering strategy is very unique because they essentially bundle up their larvae in this pack inside the leaf. And they also, so it can be found in leaf litter, or it can be found in wood, or in other areas as well. And this is our life stage here. So here you have the leaf cutter larvae is dormant, and then it goes through that pupa stage. And then the full adult emerges from that leaf wrap cocoon. Bees mate, of course, and the female bee nests, collects pollen and nectar, and lays eggs. Male bee dies, female bee dies, and the larvae eats the pollen, and then we have, you know, the life cycle over again. Oh, I love this butterfly, the morning cloak butterfly. I haven't seen one in person yet, but I know I will. So what's really interesting is that these butterflies overwinter as adults, and they have the capability to fluctuate with temperature changes and go through those constant freeze thaw periods. And these guys you'll see under like in seek shelter under loose tree bark, loose leaf litter, anything, where they can get a little bit of protection. But other than that, especially with these warmer temperatures, I'm surprised that, that we haven't been seeing more of these out and about. And of course, it's important to support our hibernating insects, and that's through understanding the insect life cycles, and knowing which insects you may be attracting in your garden and landscape. And that just goes back to knowing, are you attracting butterflies? Are you attracting moths? Are you attracting bees, ants, true bugs, and figuring out what is that life cycle and how can you support them by either leaving the leaves or leaving the dead stems. Also, what host plants do they need as well, because that's a really important factor in supporting overwintering insects, is how many host plants do you have, that the caterpillars or the different larval stages of those overwintering insects can really thrive off of and keep coming back year after year, and also increasing the pollinator population. And avoid cutting back died stems, leave the leaves, and gardening with insects in mind, once again, host plants. And here's some really great images. I thought this image here was fantastic, where it had the common milkweed, tall coreopsis, the wild bergamot, hyssop, New York ironweed, and common sneezeweed, with each of these stems hollowed out from the different overwintering insects. That was a really cool find. And also this little guy in the corner here peeping out of his little hole. And of course, I'm always on the campaign of leave the leaves, because we need them and our insects need them. And sorry, that was a lot shorter than I expected. So really quick, once again, thank you all for being here. I'm really excited, to be sharing all this information. And I actually have a book club on Facebook. It's virtual. And I do have a book raffle going on right now. So if you want to join, you can actually enter to win a signed copy of Doug Tallamy's book. And I would love to answer any questions or open up the floor, just to kind of, discuss if you have any gardening goals or if you need help with something. I'm here to serve you and help you. So feel free to come on and answer any questions that you may have. No questions? Oops. Can you suggest a nice mix of tall stem, leaf, etc. stuff for the winter? Are you like mainly plants, shrubs, or just mainly like what you can plant in the spring? Sure. Hold on one second. I'm getting a lot of questions here. Oh, okay. So a good habitat mix for insects. That would be a variety of perennials, trees, shrubs, grasses. It mainly comes down to what, like, for habitat for your area, what is your long-term goal, and what type of insects do you want to attract. So that would be looking at like what host plants, like for example, the black swallowtail would be things like golden Alexander. If you want a spice bush, Lindera benzoin, that's a host plant. Serviceberry tree is a really good host plant. Of course, milkweed and butterfly weed. And actually, birds do not eat um, milkweed caterpillars. It's not tasty to them. So their birds are more into moss species. So anything that you can plant that has a good mix of host plants for moss species, that's really important. Yeah, the fennel and parsley. Okay. And good books that describe picture larvae with adults. So I actually have a couple good books here. So this is called Bugs Rule by Whitney Cranshaw. I actually when I was taking my horticultural degree, he was my he was actually my professor for some insect classes I had to take. So this is a really good book. And also Garden Insects of North America. This is a really good book as well. It's also written by Whitney Cranshaw. And these have pretty much images of larvae. It goes by, like it's a huge book. So this is a good reference. And yes, the Xerces website, that's a really good one as well. Yeah, fennel and parsley for sure for the monarchs. And what I can do too is if you're looking for, oh, the straw, interesting. So they can go burrow in it. Yes, swallowtails love fennel. So I found that fennel and dill are really popular. I don't know what it is about those. But going back to the question of like gardening and creating a habitat, that really comes down to and this is what I do a lot with my clients is establishing those goals that you have and what you want your landscape to look like and what you want to support. And actually now is a really good time to start planning. I'm actually going to be doing another workshop and walking you through on like step-by-step process from coming up with the ideas to actually designing, implementing, and the doing. That's probably going to be in January because now is the time, like they say, to start planning your goals for your gardening. Yes, as soon as I have the registration for that one, I'm going to be more confident about. This is honestly, this is my first time really talking about insects. So I know it's a little bit bland, but it was still a lot of fun. Um, but I think, having that awareness around the insects that we're attracting that are overwintering is really important. Because for me, I like to bring to the awareness around why are we leaving the leaves instead of just saying leave the leaves, so understanding the different ways that insects overwinter, that's the awareness part. And also, the really neat information on how each insect does it differently, and their habitat requirements are going to be a little bit different throughout on what you're trying to create and replicate in your own garden. Are there any more questions that I can answer or help? I have about 20 minutes. Dedicated an hour. So I'm here for another 20 minutes. Oh yeah. Okay. So the book club, I can actually show you. It's something that I started because I love reading. Hold on one second. I'm just gonna stop my screen here. And I'm going to go to the Facebook. I can't minimize Zoom. Okay, that's fine. I'll show you the Facebook page. And then also show you the book that that was randomly chosen for the book of the month. So I started the book club because I love reading books, and I really wanted to be surrounded by a community of people who love nature and the environment. Let's see, let me go to the group here and I'll show you Nature's Narrative Book Club. And it's called Nature's Narrative Book Club. I'm gonna share my screen again. What we are protecting. Oops, I'm sorry, my computer is not functioning. Where's my chat? I'm now living with my, you want to know what I now have Justify. So I would say what we are protecting by leaving the leaves. I mean, honestly, you're protecting a lot of things by leaving the leaves. You're protecting the cost of not having the leaves, like being the environmental cost, I would say. By not having like a company come in and leaf blow, because a lot of those gas blowers, a lot of those landscape companies that have that equipment are actually polluting more into the air than, say, driving from Baltimore to DC in an hour. And I actually have a statistic on that too. Leaving the leaves, you're supplying the soil with organic matter. So then that way you're going to have healthier soil because now we're experiencing a lot of compaction in the soil where things can't survive. Nutrient deficiency is a problem. You have a lot of water, like water pooling. That means you have a lot of soil compaction. So those leaves are actually providing additional organic matter on top of the areas that you're leaving in, especially if it's grass. You're providing habitat for insects, especially the pollinators that we want to increase. You dumped their leaf blower. Actually, so in my business, I only have battery powered equipment. So I have a battery powered leaf blower. If the areas had diseased plants growing, should you remove the leaves in that area? I'll get to that question in a second. So I try to minimize the amount of like fuel, gas equipment that we use in our jobs. Because I hate using gas. In the areas that has diseased plants, should you remove the leaves in that area? It depends on the disease. If you're talking of like, can you give me an example of what disease that you're currently struggling with? So for example, if you have a rose with rose rosette disease, you actually want to remove that entire plant because that's a soil bound disease and it's going to keep spreading to other plants and especially roses. Um, some some diseases, it really depends, like if it's bacterial, fungal, viral. Um, oh yeah, let me get, sorry, we keep jumping back and back on top between topics. I will share my screen really quick. Okay, go here, share. Okay, so this is a Facebook group here. It's called Nature's Narrative Facebook group or Nature's Narrative Book Club. And the book of the month, so we're starting January 1st with Brave the Wild River. And this is actually an optional pack to get, some goodies along with the purchase of the book. So what I did was I put in about, I don't know, maybe 20 different books in a lottery thing, and then I end up it chose one randomly, and this is the book that was chosen. I actually have it. Brave the Wild River. I'm really excited about this one because it explores the botany of the Grand Canyon and two women who went hiking through it. So that's a really neat one. Trying to get to my chat here. So I can put the link to this in the Zoom chat, and you all are more than welcome to join. Oh, these are all great resources that Marlene is putting in the chat too for different plants. Would some other cover be more appropriate? Our leaves in the fall. Actually, you're fine with the leaves. You can, like, if you feel like another rule of thumb that I try to go by is mass planting to actually cover any inch of surface area. So if you feel like that you have gaps in your garden beds or have a lot of exposed areas, I would say that you need to plant more densely. But the leaves is fine, because that's actually going to break down and contribute to the organic matter in the soil. Actually, I want to see what this book is. Diseased garden area. So for the diseased garden area, do you know what type of disease and what plants? Because I kind of need a little bit more information as far as what you have going on there. And you can unmute yourself, Linda, if that's easier. Just so I can ask the, get some questions and instead of, having to worry about like a chat.
Okay, so when you said leave the leaves, and I do leave the leaves in some areas of my gardens at home, but at my garden area, I always have raised beds, and I take the crushed leaves and I put them on the beds. But prior to that, during the summertime, I would have grown something like cucumbers, squash, and sometimes they would get mildew and etc. So I'm wondering if covering them with the leaves would just allow the insects that cause the problem to harbor in the soil during the winter, or should I use something else, maybe like straw, or just leave them as compost?
So essentially your problem is, I would say that you're fine because so you have a lot of insects coming in and like decimating your vegetables and stuff and like your produce in your garden bed.
No. I don't have a lot of insects, but I do know that there's always a problem with squash and cucumber insects destroying those plants during the summertime. But normally I don't. I have a lot of beneficial insects come to my garden because I plant a lot of flowers and a lot of natives in the garden. But in some garden beds, those diseases do come in because of the squash borers who destroy the plants. So I just want to make sure that covering those particular areas with leaves is going to benefit me more than it's going to benefit the insects that are going to come back after winter.
Yeah, I would say that you're okay. You can
All
also
right.
experiment. Yeah, because essentially, um, th those insects are probably they're just eating the plant, right? Unless you see like egg masses or something, and you notice egg masses, then that's when you're going to have the problem of putting the leaves on top and then the egg mass is overwintering. So in that aspect, it might be beneficial for you to kind of do a little bit more research on um, what is the life cycle of those. So then that way you can kind of determine um, if year after year, if you're going to have more insects you don't want popping up out of leaving the leaf litter.
Okay, thanks.
Are there any more questions? I love answering questions. Yeah, you're very welcome. And thank you all once again for showing up today. I'm actually going to be doing something like this once a month on different topics as well, just to kind of spread more information about sustainable landscaping. So if there are any, so honestly, if there's any like other topics or discussions that you want me to open up about, just let me know. Thank you. Native cottage garden planning. I'm actually doing that right now with the current client. I'm doing cottage garden planning. I actually just did a visual mock-up for her too, and it looks really nice. So for that, I used a lot of purpley blue colors like grape blue lobelia, aster. Yeah, it is a lot. Yes, I do have a website. I'm actually more active on my Facebook, my business page than I am on my website though, to be honest. Let's see. I will put the link in the comments. Oops. Once again, my computer technology today. Oh my goodness. One moment here. Okay. So the book club is just a group that I created that is separate. Um, what? But the link I just put in there is a link to my actual business Facebook page. And on that page you'll see a lot of additional information, client transformations, upcoming events, things about the book club. I have that book club raffle going on. So the more people you add into the group, into the book club group, the more entries you get to actually win the signed copy of the Doug Tallamy book. I am located in Maryland, but I have a wide service range. I have a few clients in Northern Virginia. I have a couple clients in Richmond. I work with a couple clients on the Eastern Shore. Um, yeah, I'm all over the place. I go where everyone needs me and where the environment needs me, essentially. And I do offer consultations too. So if you need help creating an action plan, or if you need like eyes on your garden or landscaping and kind of need help, like, and you're not sure where to start, or you're just feeling overwhelmed, I do come out and offer 45 to 60-minute consultations as well. And I work with a mix of do-it-yourself clients and also done-for-you clients. So the do-it-yourself is essentially I help you create the action plan to get started. And if you're into doing the work, I just help you with a few different components. And then the done-for-you is essentially where I myself and my team come out and do the, whatever it is that you needed, like cleaning up beds, removing turf, plant installation, anything like that. One second. So sorry, my computer's about to die. So, yes, I can definitely do that. I can definitely offer my the special consultation fee. No problem. Yeah. Yeah, if you want, you can send me a message or email me um some dates that work for you. So, yeah, if you all go to my Facebook page, I can also email it as well. So I was offering a $55 consultation for about 60 minutes. With that, you get a free ticket to a workshop that I'm doing. Of course, not, the virtual ones are always going to be free, but I do occasionally offer in-person workshops. Um, so you get a ticket to an in-person workshop. I offer a visual mock-up, and then I help you create a plan. You get your own personal Google Drive, and essentially I help you long term to create, whatever it is that you need help with, and go from there. All right, so it is actually 1 o'clock. It has been awesome hanging out with you all for the last hour. I appreciate you all being here. It has been my pleasure to serve you with this great information and help you in any way that I can. If you need any other help or assistance, please feel free to contact me via email or Facebook. Um, and thank you all for being here and learning with me. And I hope to see some of you very soon.